Hey guys, so welcome back to part 2 of my Narra Residences review. So today I'll be deep diving into my clear framework and of course offering you guys the final verdict of what my opinion is for this development itself. Okay, so for our clear framework, clear isn't just about predicting the future, it's about managing your downsides, understanding demand quality and protecting your exit itself. And once again, let's keep in mind that for the clear framework itself, it works as a system and not in isolation, and all 5 factors must be assessed together and not selectively. So let's go through this step by step. Okay, so first we need to look at the churn rate index and the demand-supply absorption, right? We shouldn't be too interested in how many units actually sell on the launch weekend itself, but instead how easily these units change hands after that. Okay, so historically, Dairy Farm and Hillview has a lower transaction velocity than the rest of the OCR region. But that doesn't mean that demand doesn't exist. It just means that demand is slower and more selective, which tells us something important. Exit here will depend on patience and pricing, but not momentum. So let's take a look at these 3 tables. Just a very brief explanation. If you see red color, it means that supply is not getting absorbed as much as we hope to. Amber means slow absorption, and of course green means healthy absorption of the supply in the resale market in the past 12 months. So for the top left table are for resale units in the same district as Narra Residences within 1 km to any MRT stations in the radius itself. So across the unit types, we see that 3 and 4 beders, green color, they are generally absorbing very well, have very good absorption rate in this district. And of course, if we were to zoom in the top right, which is in the same district as well, District 23, but 1 km to Hillview MRT itself, we see it all being red, which highlights something that we need to take note of. Okay, bottom left is for your comparison to District 15 along your Katong, Joo Chiat, Amber Road region, where strong absorption is usually seen all year round due to its location. Right, and we do see that for the larger units like the 3 and 4 beders, demand far outweighs the supply, especially for the 4 beders of up to 4.3 for the index itself. Okay, next, the quality of the supposed future demand that we are all been hearing of for Narra Residences, right? As we covered in part 1, there is no meaningful HDB upgrader demand within the 1 to 3 km radius of Narra Residences during its TOP window in 2030. So demand comes from an extended radius of upgraders, mainly from the Tengah and the Bukit Batok clusters, right? So if we were to expand the radius, the numbers definitely, of course, will increase. Okay, and your demand may also come from landed downgraders and nature and lifestyle buyers, but let's not bank on these groups because we want to assess our purchases with as much predictability as possible and not guesswork. So moral of the story is that these buyers exist, but they don't behave like the usual mass upgrader demand, which means that pricing discipline matters more than the potential demand narrative right here. So let's take a look at the exact comparison at Dairy Farm Residences to have a clearer understanding why it's moving so slowly. So in the same narrative, there was no meaningful HDB MOP upgrader demand within the 2 km radius, as we can see on the left map, during its TOP window in 2024. But if we were to expand all the way on the right map to a 4 km radius, then of course, yes, we can see Jalan Teck Whye and the Bukit Batok clusters that hit MOP back then. But the question that we want to ask ourselves is, why is Dairy Farm Residences moving so slowly despite such huge clusters that hit MOP, which is supposedly supposed to absorb the supply like Narra Residences? Okay, so now let's talk about the part that everyone actually cares about, the price gap in comparison to the current resale market. Are we buying below, at or above fair value today? Okay, so 2 steps when we need to do such comparisons is that firstly, we use the average 1,820 per square foot that is transacting in Dairy Farm Residences, right? We factor it back in the 7% harmonization because Narra Residences is a post-harmonization project. Secondly, we need to factor in the additional 5 years of lease decay using a 3% annual conservative growth rate to make up for the age difference between these 2 developments, right? Which brings us to an approximate of 2,250 per square foot for apple-to-apple comparison to Narra Residences prices today. So with Narra Residences starting prices from 1,930 to 2,001 per square foot, for smaller unit types such as the official indicative guide that we showed earlier on, these may suggest a potential price gap, but only for the right unit types. And this is where many buyers go wrong. So remember, the project might be fairly priced, but not every unit is. Okay, next, for after costings reality check, what is this really about, right? So paper gains don't really matter. What matters is that after all your interest in the bank, your initial buyer stamp duty, your legal fees, and of course your opportunity cost, what is really left for you to bring home at the end of the day, right? So in projects like Narra Residences, returns don't come from fast flips, they come from control entry and price. So if you need a fast exit, this may potentially not be very forgiving. So say you look at a $1.2 million purchase right now, estimated interest to the bank is about $29,300. Buyer stamp duty will be about $32,600 and of course your legal fees. So if you're looking at a 100k gross profit after 4 years, which is what we are usually seeing in the Dairy Farm Residences development itself, your net gains is likely to be around the 35,000 mark, which is, ultimately, is it a decent gain? Is for you to decide. But of course, it depends on your priorities and the entry price and the specific unit you enter in at the end of the day. Okay, so the last part of the clear framework is what I call the resale-exit liquidity check. It's also a reality check for you. So it isn't about adding new assumptions, right? It's about making sure everything we discuss are actually, what they align. So first, who is the buyer when you exit 4 years later? Because based on what we've seen, Narra's buyer pool is more selective and it's not driven by intermediate or mass upgrader demand. It's made of extended radius upgraders like own-stay families and of course your landed downgraders. Second, how does resale behave here? The absorption rate in this area has historically been slower, but that doesn't mean that resale is impossible. It just means that pricing and unit choice matters more. Third, does your entry price give you options? In a project like this, you don't want to rely on urgency or hype. You want an entry price that allows you time and flexibility. And of course, lastly, development size. Narra Residences has 540 units, and that's actually a very healthy size for resale development when you want to exit in the future. So it's not boutique to the point that it's illiquid, and it's not so large that the supply overwhelms demand as well. So over time, this helps transaction volume stays active, which is important when you eventually want to exit in the future 4 years later. So when I put all of this together, Narra Residences doesn't fail the reality resale check, but it demands discipline, right? It works if you enter at the right price and if you choose the right unit and hold within the realistic expectations. So if you are relying on fast momentum or broad demand to bail you out, this is not forgiving. But if your entry gives you time and options, the resale mechanics are workable. Okay, so after running Narra through the full clear framework, the conclusion is just proceed with caution. Narra works best when buyers are disciplined on entry price, thoughtful about unit selection, and realistic about holding period. And it makes the most sense for own-stay buyers who value environment, facilities, and school proximity, particularly CHIJ-OLQP and Bukit Panjang Primary School. So on the flip side, Narra becomes risky if you're highly dependent on an MRT station, or if you're buying purely because of an upcoming demand story that you've been hearing, or if you're expecting fast upside or a short-term exit. This is not a project that rewards impatience, it rewards alignment. And that's really the purpose of the clear framework. Not to convince you to buy, but to help you to decide clearly whether a project really fits you at the end of the day. So if Narra aligns with your goals, budget, and timeline, it can make sense. But if it doesn't, walking away is also a good decision. And it's ultimately the goal here, not to sell you a project, but to help you make a decision that I hope you won't regret years later. So remember, clarity first, always. So if you'd like us to walk through with you this based on your specific situation, I'm happy to do that with you, no pressure, just reach out to us, and I'll see you in the next episode.